We're gonna be a family.
We are continuing our theme of Black love stories with this 2010 fave, Just Wright. I love this movie when it came out, and watching it now in 2024, it still does it for me. Queen Latifah and Common had such amazing on-screen chemistry that carried the entire film, and it was so refreshing to see a story about a regular woman finding love with a pro athlete and having a happy ending. Though calling Queen Latifah regular or considering her as such is crazy. Not gonna lie, watching with older eyes had me seeing a few things differently. With that being said, I noticed some things while watching this movie, but before we talk about that, it's time to recap, so let's get into it. So the movie opens up with us meeting one of our main characters, Leslie, who's on her way to a date. And this date appears to be going good. They're bonding, talking over food and wine, no funny or off vibes, until they make it outside and her date says this.
I mean, any man that gets you is gonna be beyond lucky.
You can tell that Leslie has heard this before on many occasions.
You know, we can still hang out. Yeah, I mean, you're good people.
Child, she was over it, and then she had to go home and explain this to her god sister, Morgan, who was anxiously awaiting the details of her date.
He thought I'd make the perfect homegirl.
You do have homegirl written all over you.
Leslie explains that she was just being herself, which Morgan playfully scolds her for. Now, one thing about Morgan, she's very intentional about dating. This girl was serious about getting a man with money and status. It was her full-time job, since she didn't have a real one. Morgan is obsessed with having a brand, and she sees how the girlfriends and wives of pro ballers can have that, and she thinks that that's how she can have a brand of her own. The next evening, Leslie is preparing to go to the Nets game, and her mother absolutely despised her outfit. She didn't even get a chance to greet her before she started judging her outfit choice.
How are you gonna get a man dressed like that? Why am I going to the game?
One thing that I didn't like about her mother was that she often compared Morgan and Leslie. When Morgan came down in her outfit, her mother proudly showed her off, using her as an example of how you get a man's attention. Now, Morgan was fly, but homegirl was broke, didn't have a job, and stayed with Leslie. Would you want your daughter to dress like this regularly, which again is absolutely fine if that's what she prefers, or would you want her to have other qualities outside of that too? Her mother only seemed to care about outward appearances. But anyway, they head to the game. Leslie is immersed and having a time messing with the fans of the other team in the stands, and Morgan doesn't know what the hell is going on. She's just looking at the players' wives and girlfriends across the court, trying to manifest her life of leisure.
Leslie, you should see her bag. She got the new Dominican vodka. Nobody's got that yet. Nobody.
And this is where we see Scott, our other main character. Currently, Scott is one of the star players on the team, and after this season, he will be a free agent. So Scott is gently putting pressure on the team to up the money if they want him to resign for another season. This is an important detail to note for the events that will happen later. But after the game, Leslie spots Scott at a gas station. Scott was on the phone and struggling to put gas in his car, and Leslie slid in to help him, which sparks a convo between the two. Scott was polite and their conversation was brief but easy. He offered to help open her door, which was a struggle since Leslie's car had seen better days. Before she drives off, he invites her to his birthday party, and baby, when Morgan heard this news, she was so excited. This was the moment she'd been researching and preparing for. Leslie tells her about Scott and how nice he was, even giving her a detail that she will use for her strategy later. She tells her how different he was, how he had a charity, and how he overall just seemed like a cool person, humble. Morgan asked Leslie if she was feeling him, and Leslie brushed it off, but I believe at this moment, Morgan had chosen her target and wanted to make sure he was clear for her to strike. So, Later on, the girls are getting ready for the party. Morgan helps Leslie with her makeup, and for once, her mother is pleased because maybe she can finally find a husband. Leslie's mom pulls out earrings that have significant meaning, and instead of giving them to her one and only daughter, she gives them to Morgan, her goddaughter, since, in her words, she knows that Leslie doesn't like frilly things. Oh, and let me mention how Leslie's mom hyped these earrings up, calling them good luck for meeting your future husband, which makes what happens later kind of ironic, and this understandably gets to Leslie.
What do you think? I think I'm gonna go get dressed.
So they finally make it to Scott's birthday party, and it wasn't long before Leslie was spotted by Scott at the bar. They greet each other, and again, it's not awkward, it's very easy with them. Everything was going good. Until...
Girl, I am so sorry, but I can't stay.
What?
Yeah.
And that was all it took for Scott's attention to go straight to Morgan and her fairy tales. And Leslie, already knowing where this was about to go, was completely over it.
Bartender, can I trade this in for a Hennessy? Double.
Now, Scott mentions how he wished he had more time to do charity work, and again, Morgan makes it seem like she is too busy to listen to him. This whole interaction gave Cinderella trying to beat the clock, but in this instance, Morgan doesn't leave a glass slipper or her number. Listen, she would have had me so messed up. When's the next time I'd be in a room full of fine-ass, rich-ass men, and you got me leaving due to some game you running? You better take a Uber. Girl, please. Anyway, the next day, Leslie's dad is still shade treeing his way through this house. He asked Leslie about the party, and I loved how he affirmed her.
I mean, why wouldn't he? She is beautiful.
You're beautiful.
And before Leslie can leave out the door for work, she gets a surprise visit from Scott. Scott has tracked down Morgan, and he is there to get a yes to a date. And Leslie's dad was super excited about this surprise guest. He starts removing the plastic from the furniture and sprucing up the place. Child, Morgan was knocked out upstairs. It was not for the interruption of her beauty sleep. However, when she saw Scott's car outside, she immediately found the energy to get herself together. She finally makes it downstairs and tries to act like she woke up like that. Please. And Queen is over her act, so she just leaves for work. Scott asks Morgan out for a date and she refuses, still playing the game of hard to get, but not too hard, because she eventually says yes, and their whirlwind romance begins. And this is where we get a montage of them out on the town, eating at fancy restaurants, getting spotted by paparazzi, and you already know Morgan loved that shit. Meanwhile, Leslie is still living her normal life and watching it all happen for Morgan. She's still happy for her though. We fast forward to a party at Scott's place. He's been chosen to represent his team in the All-Star game. At this point, Morgan and Scott have been dating for 3 months, and Morgan has been all up under him in more ways than one since their first date.
Girl, it's like you've been on tour like you play for the Nets.
Oh, well, I gotta stay close to my man. I mean, these women out here are treacherous.
You don't say. While Morgan is giving her a tour of Scott's home, she mentions a part of their master being a nursery, which gets Leslie's attention because this is not the Morgan she knows. Morgan tells her how when you're in love, you have a family, like it's a task, another thing to check off the list. And Leslie is skeptical about Morgan being in love, rightfully so.
You in love. Mark, this is me you talking to, remember? I know you.
You got inside my heart.
We shall see if this turns out to be true later. But later on during the party, Scott makes a toast. First, he thanks his teammates for their support, thanks his mom and Morgan, and to make the moment sweeter, he proposed to Morgan, and baby, his mama was shocked, appalled.
We're gonna be a family.
Baby, she is already drafting up an ironclad prenup in her mind, and his mama couldn't wait to talk to him after. She asks him if he's sure, and he starts talking nonsense.
You sure you're not moving too fast?
She's different, Ma. She's very special.
Mama knows, but baby boy has got to learn for himself. Anyway, we fast forward to another game, and everything is going good. Until Scott hurts his knee on the court. Child, Morgan's whole fabulous future flashed before her eyes. Now, this injury couldn't have happened at a worse time. Scott was in the middle of contract negotiations. Now it's looking like if his knee doesn't heal properly, he won't play basketball again. And again, Morgan's fabulous future is flashing before her eyes. So Scott's agent gets a renowned physical therapist to come and help Scott to get back in the game. But the second Morgan saw her, she knew she had a potential problem on her hands. Cause God forbid another woman with her same capabilities gets a little too close to her man. So she called the one woman that she assumed Scott would never go for, and that woman was Leslie. And Morgan couldn't wait to dump Scott on Leslie. Baby, she was not going to stop any plans for her future husband, even if he was injured.
You not staying?
Charity event.
Meanwhile, Scott is sitting on the couch, not tending to his knee at all. Leslie comes in and corrects him real quick. Shortly after, Scott's mom, Ella, I don't think I've said her name at this point, comes in to ask him a question about a past game, and Leslie blurts out all the details.
Sophomore year, he scored 23 points in the first half, another 32 in the second half, 18 rebounds.
Scott and Ella are surprised at her basketball knowledge, but Ella insists that Leslie help her manage the fan club, and this sparks another invitation.
You play bid whist?
Neighborhood champ, 6 years running.
So what you saying?
I'm saying, you don't want none of this.
I like her.
Funny how Leslie is having zero problems with his mom. She sees that Leslie is genuine. We fast forward to Leslie working with Scott's knee. Morgan is in the other part of the gym, paying them no mind, looking at magazines until she hears Scott holler. And when he tries to get off the table, he falls to the ground. It was at this moment Morgan mentally started packing her suitcase. The next day, Leslie meets with one of her coworkers to talk about her new gig as PT for Scott and to express how intimidated she is by this new role. Shortly after, Morgan arrived, fresh out of the boutiques. Child, Morgan is so unattached to all of this.
Hi, Peter.
It's Paul, actually, but
Oh.
that's close.
I'm sorry. Hi, Paul.
She goes on to call these meetings fun, trying to act interested, but again, she forgets that Leslie knows her for real.
Man, who doesn't like Discovery Channel, right?
You don't.
And then she exposes her selfish side.
Girl, I could not stand another minute in that big house with him doing nothing but...
Being with your man?
Well, didn't he just tear his PCL?
So he can't have fun?
Child, and then she goes on to say how stressed she's been, and the only thing that's helped is to shop. And again, she can't remember names.
Here, Patrick. Touch it.
Oh, I know.
I would have refused the gift. You can't even remember my name? This lunch revealed a lot about Morgan's character. We'll discuss this in the final thoughts. But sometime later, Scott gets a visit from Dwight Howard. He comes through to give him the unfortunate news that the Nets are considering not renewing his contract due to his injury. Now, Scott doesn't take this seriously until the next day when he's watching TV. They report on the state of his basketball career.
Oh, the kind of injury McNight has, the Nets can't get rings. His days in a Nets jersey are over after this season.
Now, I'm not sure if Morgan heard the word before he did, but Morgan became unreachable around this time. And by the next morning, there was a Dear John letter on his nightstand along with the engagement ring he'd given her. And Ella was pissed.
See? I knew there was something about that girl coming up in here pretending to care about my son when all she really cared about was herself.
Now, Leslie knew nothing about this, and she rushed home to confront Morgan.
You lost your damn mind. I take a leave of absence from my job to help your man who you just dumped, and you don't even give me a heads up.
Child, Morgan could have cared less. She's getting dressed to find her next come up, unbothered as hell. But that's something that I overlooked while watching this years ago. This girl really put Leslie's career and name on the line. She could have really destroyed her rep, for real. But Morgan gives her sorry-ass reason for possibly blowing Leslie's life and career up.
Why, Morgan? Why'd you do it? Why?
Because I want to be somebody.
And Leslie gives her a piece of her mind.
You can't possibly be this messed up. Using people, hurting them, discarding boyfriends like old shoes. You got problems.
After their talk, Leslie heads back to Scott's to apologize to him, but he didn't want to hear it.
I'm so sorry. Morgan didn't even...
Is this part of your job?
No.
Just stick to your job.
After this, Scott goes into a mini depression over his breakup with Morgan. He doesn't want to get out of bed, doesn't want to eat, doesn't want to speak with anyone. Finally, after a few days, Leslie decided to give him some motivation to get up.
What the?
Get up.
Leslie, what are you doing?
Get up. You coming with me. You coming with me.
I'm not going any... Okay.
Child, he was big mad when he made it to the car.
No disrespect, but I really think it's time you get a new whip.
Leslie takes him to his old stomping grounds, hoping to restore his love for basketball and his hunger to play. She even gives him a fact that he needed to hear.
And how, no matter how good they are, most of them will never make it to the NBA. But not you. You blessed.
As they're talking, the neighborhood kids spot him and come over to talk to him. This brightens his mood, and from here, he's motivated to do what needs to be done to get back in the game. We get a montage of Leslie working with Scott, trying to get his knee back to where it was. Sometime later, Scott tells Leslie that she's awesome at what she does and should consider working in the NBA. When Leslie says this, Scott let his building feelings show for just a second.
Guess I could see myself hanging around a bunch of hot, sweaty guys.
That ain't cool.
We also learn the story behind Leslie's hoopty, affectionately named Eleanor. Eleanor was given to her by her grandfather. Leslie explains that she hasn't found a shop that could fix her car without removing the dimple or dent in her driver's side door. She wants to keep the dimple because it reminds her of her grandfather's dimple that he had on the same side of his face. This is an important detail for later. On another day, we see Scott and Leslie taking a walk and having a conversation about their school years. Having the type of convos you have when you are getting to know each other. It's cute. Later on that day, during a card game, Scott tells Leslie about how he never knew his dad and how sometimes he envisions him sitting in the stands watching him play. Scott also asks Leslie this question.
So you know I gotta ask you, right? You haven't been out on one single date since you've been here. I haven't seen your cell being blown up or so what's up?
Scott goes into all of Leslie's good qualities and asks how she's possibly single, and she tells him her one requirement.
I just haven't found what I'm looking for.
What's that?
The one I can't live without.
During this convo, she sneezes about 2 times, and Scott insists that she may be coming down with a cold. She tried to deny it, but the next day she was out for the count, and Scott took care of her.
And now I'm gonna take care of you.
And he stayed by her side and continued to take care of her, and eventually they fell asleep. And y'all, this was so cute. Sometime later, Leslie is walking through the house and hears Scott playing the piano. When she comes in, Scott tells her that he sucks at playing and is a bit nervous to play in front of her, but she encourages him to keep playing. He ends up playing a song she's familiar with, and she starts singing as he plays. It's super cute. Scott expresses his insecurities about playing his first game since his injury, and Leslie gives him the motivation that he needs.
What if I get on that floor tomorrow and then
You
it's
won't.
just like...
You won't fail.
But Scott looks over at her plate of goodies, and Leslie insists that he try one. He tries it and loves it, but when he tries to get more, he and Leslie have a moment.
You better get some rest.
The way that he stared at her though, child. But we fast forward to Scott's first night back on the court. At first, he's not doing well. You could tell that he is still scared and moving like it too. After a rough first quarter, Scott sits down and he's feeling down on himself. Leslie comes over and gives him a pep talk.
Anything you want to do, you can do. Believe in yourself. You will not fail.
And that was all he needed to get his head and that knee back in the game, and his team wins. After the game, Scott thanks Leslie for everything she's done for him.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, really, thank you.
To show his gratitude, he offers her a bonus.
How about dinner someplace really nice?
You better be packing something in that wallet. I'm not one of those salad-eating chicks. I like her.
Listen, dinner is fine, but Playboy, I'm gonna need some figures in my account. I can't pay no bills with a medium rare ribeye. No, I can't. But anyway, we fast forward to their dinner and Scott has gone all out. He's reserved an entire restaurant for just the two of them and had a jazz band play for them. This was so thoughtful. And during their dinner, they were trading glances with each other. It was real cute. But the icing on the cake was Scott getting Eleanor back to her glory days without sacrificing her dimple. This will forever be my fave model Mustang. I'd be terrified to drive it though. But Leslie, of course, is so happy and thankful for Scott's generosity. So thankful that she slips up and kisses him. And he returns the favor. And they end up, well.
Yeah.
And y'all, things were going so well. Too well. Leslie woke up feeling all happy, like I finally got me a boo and he's actually a good soul and he's got a good career. I'm winning out in these streets. But then,
Hi.
child, she saw that game and was like, let me go get my man back. He may have a chance after all. Shortly after she arrives, Scott returns from his run and he's confused. Leslie leaves the room to let them talk, but she stays close enough to hear Morgan spew out her bullshit.
My mom died when I was 3. My dad left the day after my 5th birthday.
And Leslie knew that this wouldn't be any different and called it a loss and headed upstairs. By the end of Morgan's grade A manipulation, Scott insists that she leave, but tells her he needs time to think. He heads upstairs to talk to Leslie and finds her packing her clothes.
Leslie, why are you leaving?
You tell me why I'm leaving.
And then he says this.
She's gone through a lot to be with me.
You have no idea. But Scott tells Leslie how she's special to him, but Leslie lets him know that that's not enough for her, and she leaves and he lets her go. She holds it in until she makes it to the car and she finally falls apart. First off, I would have to drive off before breaking down because I refuse to let him see me cry. Breaking down in front of his house where he could possibly see you is crazy. But secondly, it wasn't even 24 hours after she gave it to him before he switched up. Like, what the hell? Leslie's dad notices she's home and also notices that she's taking her frustrations out on the wall. Instead of urging her to talk, he gently stands beside her and helps her paint. I loved her daddy. He was so supportive of her. Sometime after, Leslie goes back to her job and she tells her coworkers her plans of being an athletic trainer for the NBA. Meanwhile, Morgan re-enters her life as an NBA girlfriend. It's here where Scott starts seeing Morgan for who she really is.
You offered something to drink.
Champagne. No. What are your sakes?
I suggest our Honjozo.
And your junmais?
And Morgan jumps straight to it, telling Scott that she found out the venue that they were originally using for their wedding is still available. And Scott gets her together.
Would it be too optimistic to reserve it?
You were right. Way premature.
Morgan immediately starts questioning Scott's loyalty, but Scott gets her together yet again.
After all this happened, I need to take this slow.
We go back to Leslie, and child, her life is about to change for the better. She checks her voicemail and learns she's a hot commodity out in these NBA streets. Everybody has seen how she got Scott back in the game and wants to recruit her to their team. Love that for her. And again, Scott realizes who he chose.
Would you mind if I close the door?
No.
And the news about Leslie's endless job options makes its way to Scott. Scott's agent represents Leslie now and lets him know the details, particularly that she won't be signing with the Nets and is seriously considering an offer from the 76ers. And then we go to Leslie's mama. Child, her mama got on my nerves. Her mom starts digging into why Leslie is seriously considering working for the 76ers instead of her beloved Nets.
You fell in love with that man, didn't you? That kind of man.
Any man too blind or too stupid not to realize how special you are.
Again, I love her dad. Now, her mom may mean well, but the delivery is way off. Anyway, we fast forward to Scott doing an interview, and of course, Morgan is chilling in the cut. Scott's asked about how he made his return back to the court so quickly, and Scott tells him that he owes it all to Leslie. And he goes in and says how she encouraged him, saw something in him that he didn't see in himself. And mind you, Morgan is watching him say this and realizes that he's in love with Leslie. And Morgan does a good deed, probably the only good deed she's done thus far, and tells Scott where Leslie is so that he can go get her. This dude jumped up and left this interview. I bet that host was pissed. But we go to Leslie leaving out of a meeting, and Scott is outside waiting for her, sitting on his car playing jazz music. He spots Leslie, walks up to her, and professes his love for her.
I'm in love with you. I know that now.
No, what you know now is that the woman that you were gonna marry is not the woman you thought she was.
Leslie continues to put him in his place, letting him know that she refuses to be option number 2.
I don't want to be plan B. And I won't be that even for Scott McNight.
Scott insists that he's there because he wants to be with her and loves her and knows she loves him too.
I'm not leaving these grounds without you. I'm not waking up another morning without being able to look at you next to me. Leslie, you're just right for me.
Leslie walks away and gets on the phone. Scott thinks that she's not trying to hear him, but Leslie makes a call to the Nets and accepts their job offer. And from here, Leslie and Scott are together and they even get married. Scott continues to play for the Nets while Leslie works as their athletic trainer. We love a power couple. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. And here are my final thoughts. Listen, I was obsessed with this movie when it came out. I remember not wanting to see it, thinking it was going to be another cheesy rom-com, but when I finally watched it, I fell in love with Leslie and Scott's story. I love seeing a love story where the one who isn't expected to have the happy ending gets the happy ending. Leslie found herself having the same issue when it came to men and trying to find, in her words, the one she couldn't live without. Men would view her as the homegirl, someone to laugh with, joke with, have a good time with, but never consider her being more than that. And what was kind of insulting was the fact that they would acknowledge that she was this amazing person and had so many great qualities, but even those amazing qualities weren't good enough for them. Continuously hearing this from potential mates and even your own parent has got to be tough. Watching this film back then, Leslie's mom irked me, but watching this film now, the feelings are more intense because that's your daughter. This lady really compared Morgan and Leslie, continuously enforcing the belief that Leslie needed to dress a certain way or look a certain way to get a certain type of man. Now, I'm sure that every time Leslie steps outside her door or every time she finds herself interested in a guy, she's reminded that that's a universal belief. She doesn't need you as her mother and support system to constantly remind her. I loved how her dad affirmed her and tried his best to support her and drown out her mother's critical comments. Let's get on Morgan. As I said before, Morgan was very intentional when it came to dating. That in itself is never a bad thing. I feel that underneath the games, Morgan just wanted to be more than what she was. She assumed being attached to a successful man would get her there and keep her there. So she did what she had to do, acted like she needed to act, and basically played the part to get Scott, which was incredibly easy for her since she fit all the proper boxes that Leslie didn't fit in. She tried to convince herself and Leslie that she loved this man, somehow convinced him that she did. Again, this was really easy for her to do. Mind you, Scott's mom and Leslie saw right through her, but after Scott injured his knee, started to weigh her options. How could she, in her words, be somebody if the somebody who was supposed to get her there couldn't even keep himself there? This girl didn't even have enough love for him to call him, text him, nothing. She snuck in that house, left him a Dear John letter, and moved on with her life with a quickness. She never considered how this would affect Leslie, the one who took a leave of absence from her job to help her fiance. She could have blown her life and career up, and then to show up after Scott proved himself again on the court and assuming that things will continue on as they were before. She was delusional as hell. As far as Leslie and Scott's love story, I'm not gonna lie, seeing them get to know each other, the conversations they would have, seeing him motivate her and seeing her motivate him when he was feeling insecure about his knee and getting back on the court, watching them fall in love was super cute to see. But what truly pissed me off is that after all the bonding they'd done, the feelings they both developed after her motivating him motivating her, helping him to gain his confidence back, encouraging him to play piano, Scott seeing all these amazing qualities that Leslie had. This bastard couldn't even give her 24 hours to be happy and carefree. Like, literally the next morning, he switched sides and forgot everything they had built. And yes, this happened quickly, granted, so did he and Morgan, but still, I'm still mad about that. He didn't have to do Leslie like that at all. In the end, it was great to see them together and for Leslie to have her happy ending. But the good and grown me watching this wonders, did he really deserve this second chance? I don't know. But all in all, this is still my movie. And with that being said, thanks for watching this review. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. As for my next review, all I'm gonna say is 1998, a love story based on a beloved author's true love story that turned messy, with an iconic leading lady and a cast of Black Hollywood faves. That's all I'm saying. See you next time, you guys. Bye.